can switch chairs and put a different chair there so you can sit down and put your back up against that.
I know. Well, usually standing up straight is good only because the right hair is on that one for us. Good chair.
This is how I like the kitchen to look. Thank you all. I like the room to look too. My room now is the only one that's messed up. It needs to be cleaned.
You need to clean it?
Yeah. But I am. I'm gonna do it a lot while y'all work. I got to start figuring out what I want to eat and what I don't.
But actually simply stands for integrity, or the adulthood of our minds, emotions, and inner convictions. We term an adult now anyone who is able to vote or drive a car. Actually, this statement is completely erroneous. An adult is a person who lives on the level of a realistic integrity relating to his humanity. We are human beings, and as human beings we are under universal law, and it is our reaction to universal law that determines the degree of adulthood that we have reached. An adult now is a person who is legally permitted to attend X pictures, who is legally entitled to be an alcoholic and to commit all kinds of misdemeanors which children are not allowed to have. So that today a great many younger people are waiting impatiently until they are old enough to commit a variety of delinquencies. Therefore, an adult to us mostly is a person who can do things that are not proper for a younger person to do, and perhaps is beyond the capacity of the elder person. Somewhere in between, we consider ourselves to have the right to think that we are a mature human being. Actually, the term maturity as we use it now is a grand illusion. It has very little to do with value. It has very little to do with the levels upon which human beings function. You notice, of course, that mankind has a certain unique place in the physical environment in which we live. Human beings have the power to question, to ask, and for that matter, to rationalize their own existences. Animals do not do this. Animals are completely governed by group intelligences. They do what their kind is supposed to do. And we have outgrown this. We no longer do the things that our kinds are supposed to do. We break all the rules because we have will and individuality and personal intellectual. We are not anywhere near mature. If a mature person comes along, they're apt to be crucified. They're apt to be disgraced and dishonored, because maturity demands integrity, and integrity is in short supply and even shorter demand. We do not really want to grow up. We want to remain in a world of childlikeness or childishness. We want to live in a world where someone else does our thinking for us, where we are protected in every way possible, where we do as little as we can and gain as much as we are allowed to gain from our efforts. We expect to be supervised, we expect to be protected, catered to, and even come under a benevolent care of an invisible deity. We are not ready to stand on our own feet, do our own thinking, and create appropriate codes for personal conduct. As we notice in a great many television programs that are coming through, particularly on Station 28, there are a great many nature studies. Many of these nature studies are most illuminating and inspiring. Most of all, however, they tell us that these various creatures live under laws, that these laws were not created by them, and they have absolutely no way of amending them. They simply fulfill the problems of survival and perpetuation. They have within themselves a mysterious code which tells them what to do, and some of the things they do are almost unbelievable. We must almost believe that each of these creatures has a tremendous storehouse of individuality, but this is not the case. The bird that builds the extraordinary nest is following impulses, instincts, and attitudes within itself, peculiar to its kind, and it will seldom violate the laws of its kind. Therefore, we say with Aquinas that there are no such things as sinful animals. There are no plants that are delinquent. All of these forms of life are by nature and inherent pressure creatures of integrity. They do the job they came to do. They live the way they are supposed to live. And they are all gathered together into groups, types, generas, structures, and systems by which they maintain and perpetuate themselves rather well until mankind comes in and spoils things for them. Today we are also to remember that the individual is no longer under animal controls. He is under the control of his own mind. He has the right to create his own way of life. But this does not give him an excuse for delinquency. Man, because he is capable of knowing what laws are and why they are, and through experience justify their need, because of these elements within himself, the human being is capable of judging and planning a career. If at the time he makes these plans he is very young, then he must depend upon education to give him a basic working outline. Education for the human being should be developed strongly on the principle of responsibilities. He has duties to himself. He has duties to his kind, the humanity of which he is a part. He has duties to nature around him, over which he has a certain domination as a gardener, a worker in this particular world. He has responsibilities from the cradle to the grave, and these responsibilities he must fit himself for. If he fits himself properly for the responsibilities of living, he will have a reasonably constructive and helpful life. He will be respected by others, and he will respect himself. If, however, he loses sight of all the rules which every other creature in the universe must obey, and starts out on a solo flight to the satisfaction of his own appetites, he will very soon be in serious trouble. And the more serious the trouble is, the more rapidly it spreads through society. The delinquent individual is not only damaging himself, but he is damaging the entire human race, and for that matter is extending into all the other kingdoms of nature in one way or another. Man today is destroying not only his own way of life, but the very planet on which he is living. Now, the universal law also has certain curbs on it. He can go so far, no further can he go. Because after he reaches a certain point, his various conducts become autocorrective. The individual either reaches a point where he understands and mends his ways, or continues as he was and vanishes from this sphere of activity. We see this around us today. We see it in practically every problem that confronts us. Somewhere along the line, man came to the erroneous conclusion that he could do as he pleases. This is simply not true. He must please to do that which is right. And we see this constantly in human relationships. We see it in the relationships of nations. We watch with very grave anxiety the results of human ambitions that have been allowed to become maniacal, that have become beyond control. All of these things come back to us in the problem of our own maturity. We start out in life comparatively innocent creatures, but let us not deceive ourselves. Within each innocent creature there are potentials. These potentials have to be developed. Life has to be built and unfolded in a reasonable manner. No two persons in the human kingdom are exactly alike. Each one has a personality. Each one has a degree of growth. Each one, however, possesses the power to estimate what he knows and what he does not know. He has the right to improve himself to a degree at least. He has the right to choose that which is best for himself so far as he knows. This problem of the selectivity of living is not present in the animal kingdom. It is part of man's peculiar endowment. By this, the individual can say to himself, I will be a good businessman, I will be a doctor, a lawyer, I will be a worker, I will do that which my own innate capacities permit me to do. And in order that my capacities may be a little more than that by which I came into the world, we have the idea that I will become educated, that I will learn a trade, that I will study a profession, and that I will do one thing or another to make myself more valuable to society, and therefore receive greater recognition from society. These things are personal decisions, and these decisions become the basis of growth and the development of our lives. Now, every child has to pass through certain stages toward adulthood. This is the body itself building its own way in life. It is the body gradually becoming capable of maintaining the dweller that lives in the body. What Carl Jung calls the person in the body. In other words, before he can settle down to a useful life, the individual has to build a house. This house is primarily his own body. This body is variously conditioned by circumstances. Some have better starts than others. Some have more problems to face than others. But everyone in his own place must try in every way possible to build into life that which is most necessary to an adulthood of usefulness. To fail to do this is to become a failure in nature. And in all kingdoms except the human, failures do not survive long. With us, they survive a little longer, apparently in a hope of redemption. Actually, the building up of a career and a body to sustain it, these are the labors of growth. These are the things we study for. These are the problems which we face in an effort to understand the world in which we live. Unfortunately, we are not being given the cooperation we need in most cases. Many families, the parents are completely self-interested, or perhaps very tyrannical and demand absolute equality for themselves, but nothing for the children. This type of thing does damage the young person. Broken homes, various inconsistencies of economics and social conditions, political upheavals, all of these things interfere with the natural growth of the individual. Strangely enough, the animal kingdoms and the plants also have problems. They are subject to all kinds of natural calamities. They are subject to earthquakes and droughts, and tidal waves, cyclones. They are subject to many types of infestations and things of this nature. But the animal kingdom keeps quietly on its way, and it does not change its own conduct to make it easier to live under an unnatural condition. The animal knows only one condition, that in which it lives. Therefore it adapts to it, adjusts to it, and gradually becomes capable of perpetuating it for its own progeny. With the human being, confusion is a more common problem. The human being, with all of his neighbors and associates, constitutes a unit of individualism that is often dramatic and dangerous. The human being does as he pleases, not as he should. He does not worry or consider the effect of his conduct on other people. He feels that he is intended for certain ends, and these ends he will accomplish at all costs. His favorite ends are wealth, power, and fame. These are the things that he really considers to be the great realities. Animals don't seem to suffer from this peculiar absurdity at all. They are not particularly interested in wealth, except to put a few chestnuts away for the winter. The great careerism, which has dominated humanity from the beginning, and has given us nearly 8,000 wars in the records of history. This type of thing is unknown outside of our own kingdom. And it is one of the reasons why our kingdom is always staggering along under a tremendous adversity of one kind or another. Now, how are we going to estimate the problem? How are we going to decide what the individual should be and what he should do? Now, to try to face this problem is immediately to bring down upon one's head the wrath of his neighbors. Each person is convinced that everyone else should do what he wants them to do. To differ from him is a mistake. To differ loudly and clearly is anarchy. Each person has a unique correctness in his own thinking. This correctness has nothing to do
Insurance. How can we help you?
with the study of his own inner life. It is simply the decision and determination to accomplish the goals which he has set for himself. The worst part of it all is that most of these goals have to be temporary. The human being's ambitions are very illusional. His career is an illusion, because he can only maintain it for a comparatively short time. So we begin to say, what the difference between maturity and what we might call growing up? Maturity must be building in something that survives the vicissitudes of age. Age and maturity are not synonymous terms. The elder is not mature. The elder is simply older in years, but he does not necessarily represent a person of greater personal maturity. Maturity, therefore, demands an individual taking hold of his own life and making it significant. Significant of things which are the best that he knows. The other kingdoms have no best and no worst because they do not know. Man, however, can create his own kind of life. He can create his own kind of civilization, his own kind of empire. He has the right gradually to change things according to his heart's desire. But while he is doing all this, he must realize that he is doing these things under a vast canopy of inevitables. The things that he does that he should not do will not succeed. The things that he neglects to do that he should do are the things that might have succeeded. Little by little, the human being is breaking away from the rulership of the laws of existence. He is breaking these laws largely for the gratification of ambition and appetite. And the more he does this, and the more consistently he continues it, the more miserable he becomes. So I think Confucius, perhaps, and Lao Tzu and Mencius were very wise in certain things. Namely, that the beginning of a good life probably is to realize that we come into this world only part way along a great evolutionary path. We are not on the summit of eternity. We are somewhere in the lower foothills. We are not now ready for that supreme fulfillment that we constantly feel that we're entitled to, even though we've done nothing to earn it. We are not actually as wise as we think we are, and we are not as prepared for decisions as we believe we are. Most people are quite certain that they are being imposed upon by their doctor, their lawyer, and all these various professions that serve them. But they do not realize that they are imposing upon themselves, and that the very traits that they resent in others are in themselves also, and will be there until they're weeded out. We have to begin to think in terms of what the difference is between human beings and members of lower kingdoms. The members of lower kingdoms live within a universal protection, in which the fact that they are small children, in a sense, permits them to receive continual guidance from a power that is never able to fail because of its innate integrity. Therefore, all these lower kingdoms are small children who must gradually grow up through one degree after another of growth and unfoldment. But this growth and unfoldment is guarded and protected by laws which these creatures cannot break, and which they have no instinct to break. There is no particular ambition in an animal except to protect the small area which is its field of activity. It has to protect its own region, its own family, because in so doing he protects the continuation of his own particular lifeline. This problem of territory has been gradually unfolded in the case of humanity until the world becomes a territory and is at the disposal of anyone who can conquer it. Therefore, to us, territory is not to protect our own, but to fulfill our ambitions, aggravate our various emotions, and develop great financial resources. We take territory to enslave it. The animal takes no such attitude. He uses the natural resources as they are. He only sets aside for himself that which is sufficient for the needs of his own immediate brood. Thus there is a great difference in these points. Animals and birds and fish and flowers, trees, all have strange integrities because they are fulfilling the purpose for which they were fashioned. This brings us to the question that man alone tries to answer. What is the purpose for which we were created? Why are we here? What are we supposed to do? How are we supposed to span these years that make up our physical embodiment? We look around us and we hold something that should temper us but does not. And that is, of all creatures, we are the only ones that know we are impermanent. Other creatures have no realization of the future. They only have the keys of survival until something destroys them. And in the animal kingdom, the very young and the very have to pay the penalties of in that.
I'm here for you. That shouldn't be a problem. I'll have your personal vehicle collected as soon as possible.